Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kings of Fantasy Football. I'm your co-host Pablo, and here's my co-host.
Leo.
So, on today's episode, we are going to do starts and sits for week 4 of the fantasy football season. So, let's go ahead and dive right in to QBs. So, the QB that I'm going to start this week is going to be Jordan Love of the Packers. I think he is going to be primed for a big night, especially against, the big headlines of Michael Parsons getting traded to the Packers. I feel like, um, you know, especially without CD Lamb, I would have said it's going to be a higher scoring game, but now I don't think so. I think it's going to be just like the playoffs when they went into Dallas and um, put up a lot of points. So I think Jordan Love, especially after that shocker against the Browns, they're going to be prepared to play in the primetime matchup against Dallas. Caleb put up a lot of points. So did Russell Wilson. So I think Jordan Love should be in that same conversation. I think he's a must start for QBs this week. What about you?
All right. Well, the quarterback, you just kind of mentioned them. I'm gonna go with the red hot Caleb Williams. Like you said last week, he blew up against in week 3 against the Cowboys that he threw for 298 yards and 4 touchdowns. So this week he has another favorable matchup that he's going to be facing the Raiders, who have recently allowed Justin Herbert and Marcus Mariota to score over 22 fantasy points over the past 2 weeks. So I see Williams having probably a top 5 finish as a fantasy quarterback this week, possibly.
Yeah, I really wish I would have drafted Caleb in both of my leagues since they're super flex. I really wish I would have had him in one, but don't have him in either. So props to everyone who has him. Like you said, blew up last week, 4 touchdowns. So yeah, gotta continue with that hot hand. Now, as far as the quarterback that I'm gonna sit this week, even though they had a really good game Monday night against the Ravens, I'm actually gonna sit Jared Goff this week. They're going up against a much better defense than the Browns, who last week had 5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 1 interception. When I was watching that game, I feel like Myles Garrett was just, able to get multiple sacks. So I think it's going to be much harder, especially with that new offensive line that Detroit has. Um, so for those reasons, I would say Goff. What about you, Leo?
All right. So my sit for the week, and as a quarterback, I'm gonna have to sit Dak Prescott. And not only is that he's lost CD Lamb, his number one weapon, with an ankle injury, he's also lost a couple offensive linemen, a guard and and the center. And this week they're going to be playing the tough Green Bay Packers defense, and that they've pretty much shut everyone down. So if you have Dak Prescott, like I do in a couple leagues, let him hit the pine and go with the other option, because it's not going to be pretty this week for him.
Yeah, losing Lamb, very, very difficult. Wonder if any of the other receivers are going to step up. Maybe Pickens has a good game, but besides that, I don't know if other receivers will step up. So moving on to running backs. I know these owners were very happy last week when Marion Hampton finally had a breakout game, but that was both mostly due to Najee Harris's injury. But if Omarion is going to be that workhorse, which everyone drafted him to be that, he has a really good matchup this week against the Giants, who lost against the Chiefs last week. So even though Jackson Dart is going to be the starter for the Giants, I still just think that Omarion has a really good favorable matchup this week. And, with Najee being down, he's going to get the majority of the carries. So for that reason, I would definitely start Omarion Hampton. What about you, Leo?
My start at the running back is going to be Brees Hall. He's going up against the Dolphins on Monday Night Football. The Dolphins are allowing the fifth most fantasy points to running back this season. They allow 6.1 yards per play and 23.3 point PPR fantasy points to running backs this year. So fire up Breece Hall. That he's gonna be hopefully, even though it's against my team, he's gonna be scoring some points for fantasy managers on Monday night for sure.
Okay. I know supposedly Justin Fields is supposed to be back, so hopefully that helps that offense, who almost pulled off a really crazy win last week. So my running back to sit, can't believe I'm gonna say this, especially with all the preseason hype, but I think if you're gonna sit anyone that you drafted super high, I think, after 3 weeks of them not, having the performance that you think that they would have, which is why you drafted them so early, I think week 4, you have to make that big decision. I'm gonna sit John T. if I was an owner of John T, which I'm not, but comes to a point where he's the most points he's had in the PPR, which is what my scoring is 12. So he was either a first rounder or early second, and he has not lived up to that. So for those reasons, I'm sitting him. What about you?
Yeah, he's definitely has not helped fantasy manage this year. That's for sure. I'm one of them, but it is what it is. All right, so my sit for the week at running back is gonna be DeAndre Swift. Last week he was dealing with some issues, some health issues. Now he's dealing. With a quad injury, and now he's dealing with a groin injury. He's been limited so far this week. They're going to be facing the Raiders, who are very good. Have been pretty decent against the run so far, and they're traveling to Vegas, so it's an away game. With the way that Caleb is playing, I just don't see him being that involved in the game. That's where they're gonna make their attack against the Raiders. So I think maybe he gets a touchdown, but I would temper your expectations there with Mr. Swift.
All right. Now, moving on to wide receivers. Wide receiver that I would start, kind of how Leo was talking about it. I think he's one of the major reasons why Caleb has had such a good season so far, fantasy-wise. And it's going to be Odunze. Odunze is one of the better wide receivers out there currently, and people that drafted him, pretty late. He's facing the Raiders this week, who last week had got a lot of points scored on them. So Odunze PPR 15, 30, another 15. So I think right now he's a start every week. So definitely gonna start Odunze. What about you?
I'm gonna go with Cortland Sutton as my start. It's we actually have a double header on Monday night, so the Broncos will be facing the Bengals. They have the Bengals have been a mess this year. In 2 of the last 3 games, Cortland Sutton has scored over 18 fantasy points, including over 23 points fantasy points last week. And the Bengals, he should still be in your lineups there. They've the Bengals defense have given up 11 plus fantasy points to 5
Yeah, I think
wide receivers
Sutton
this year so
managers
far,
as well, kind of like in
and
that
2
same
of them
boat
have gone even over 16
as Odunze owners,
this year. So
drafted him
Son should have a pretty solid game.
Later
He should be
in your drafts, when
maybe like a wide receiver 2,
and he
wide receiver
has
3.
been producing.
So he should
as
be
of
able to
late.
produce for you this week.
Week 1, he had a
Bo
good
Nix.
game, wide receiver 13, and last week he was wide receiver 3 against the Chargers. Currently, the Bengals defense is, doing better than I anticipated, but with the injury of Burrow, that defense, has been on the field a lot more than they probably want to. So I think Sutton is having a good year so far. So definitely agree with starting Sutton. Now, as far as the wide receiver that I would sit this week is going to be Lad McConkey of the Chargers. I just feel, kind of like the same boat as Genty. You drafted McConkey to be that wide receiver 1. He has not lived up to that just yet. Week 1, 13 points. Week 2, 9. Week 3, 8. PPR leagues. And I think there's just way too many mouths to feed in the Chargers offense, especially with the emergence of Hampton now. Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson, they're getting targets. And then I think you were talking about their rookie tight end as well. So I think, again, it's just a lot of mouths to feed in that Chargers offense. So for those reasons, I'm going to sit McConkey. So that is who I would sit. Leo is kind of mentioning that I agree with your start of Sutton.
Yeah, so my sit is going to be Mr. T. Higgins. Yeah, so my they're going against is going to be Broncos. Mr. T. Higgins, like they're going against before. Suns Broncos. I got them starting against them. Mentioned before. Higgins, I'm going to be sitting. I got them starting against them, but Higgins, I'm going to be sitting him. Obviously with Joe Burrow out for the year. Well, not for the year, but possibly Joe Burrow out for the year. Well, not for the year, but Jake Browning out for the year. At least out to December. To expectations Jake Browning, and then he didn't live up to expectations last week. And they're playing against Denver this week. And he, which they have, and they're playing against Denver this week. Which they have a tough defense. He last week. T. Higgins just mustered up only last 2.5 fantasy. T. Higgins just mustered up only 2.5 fantasy points. So yeah, he's only had on. He's been under. So yeah, he's been held under 7 points in 2 of the 3 games so far. He's been held under 7 points in 2 of the 3 games so far. Definitely not someone that you want to start. So it's a shame because he was not someone that you want to start. Late second or third, because he was probably drafted him. He's late second or third player to trust right now. So if you have him, I would definitely sit player to trust right now. T. Higgins this week. If you have him, I would definitely sit T. Higgins this week.
Yeah. Everyone was talking about the rest of the position players for the Bengals as soon as Burrow went down and how it was going to affect them. Doesn't look like the Bengals, are shopping QBs, but I think if it's another dud, you have to. You started, I think, 2-0, which is a big difference of last year. So I think the Bengals will have to shop for QBs if it's another dud this week, because I think that offense has, too much talent. Now, moving on to tight ends. The tight end that I would start this week is going to be Dalton Kincaid. I think this year the Bills' offense is kind of how the Lions' offense has been the last few years. You've, high-powered, but everyone's still able to be relevant fantasy-wise. First 3 games for Kincaid, PPR, he had 14 points against Baltimore, 7 against the Jets, and 17 last week against Miami. For tight end numbers, that's really good. and they have a really favorable matchup against the Saints this week. So definitely would
I'm
start
going to start this
Kincaid.
week
What about you?
TJ Hawkinson. I'm going to even though they're playing the Steelers, the Steelers actually allow the second most fantasy points. Even though they're playing the Steelers, the Steelers actually allow the second most fantasy points to Carson Wentz against tight ends this year behind center. He actually Carson Wentz the ball around a little bit more behind center, and got Hawkinson involved. McCarthy didn't really look Hawkinson's way. Got Hawkinson while he was in there, but McCarthy didn't really look Hawkinson's way while he was in there. But Wentz last week the Steelers. The last week are allowing the Steelers a league high over 13 fantasy points are allowing the tight ends this year. So over 13 fantasy points to the tight ends this year. Give them a go if you have a Hawkinson. He might give him a go. Also keep in mind a little bit that he might Jordan Addison also keep in mind a little bit that maybe he might Jordan not get as much returning this week. So that will also maybe he might not get as much touches. Another weapon that will also the Steelers have the opportunity with on the outside, and that'll maybe another weapon that the Steelers have to make more plays on the outside, and that'll maybe allow Hawkinson to make more plays inside. So think about starting Hawkinson again. So I would definitely think about starting Hawkinson again this week.
All right. Now as far as the tight end that I would sit, to any Taylor Swift fans, apologize, but I'm gonna sit Kelsey this week against Baltimore. And one thing that I never thought I would be saying in this 2025 season is that whoever loses between the Ravens and the Chiefs this week is going to be 1-3. And then would not think that either of those two teams would be in that predicament. So he goes up against Baltimore. First 2 weeks he was decent, tight end, top 10 tight end. Then last week against the Giants he was all the way down in tight end 25 with only 6 points. And I don't know who's gonna win between those two teams, but I don't know if Baltimore allows another 30+ point defense again.
Oh, this one I might get some cross-eyed looks for this. This one I might get some cross-eyed looks after he blew up last week. Tight end to sit for 6. Espacio after he blew up last week. 6 for 6 catches for 91 yards and a couple touchdowns. 6 my sit this week is actually 91 yards and a couple touchdowns. But my sit this week is actually Isaiah Likely's going to be coming back this week. I believe Isaiah Likely is going to be coming back this week. Like I said, and I know you're probably going to start him. What makes like I said, and I know you're going to, but if you do, just lower those expectations. Obviously, what he did. But if you do, just lower those expectations. They're playing the Chiefs this week, and they allow the third fewest. They're playing the Chiefs this week, and they allow the third fewest and fantasy points to. So they might this season crank them down. A little bit. They've only so they might they average crank them down 4.8 points per game. Average just to 4.8 points so per game. Just keep that in mind. If you do decide to start Mac, keep that in mind. If you do decide to start Mac Andrew.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Kind of like the whole, Pitt situation. They finally had a breakout game, so all the managers gonna be like, "Oh, is this finally where, young Andrews comes back?" But like you said, Isaiah Likely, if he's coming back, is gonna get in some to that production, considering, like these younger. And he said, he had a decent campaign last year. So yeah, totally understand. Now, moving on to defenses. The defense that I would start this week is the Commanders. They're going up against the Falcons, and that offense. After week 1, I was like, wow, that offense is gonna, be really good with Michael Penix. And then from a fantasy perspective, he really did good week 1. And then the next 2 weeks, he was the bottom of the barrel. So 6 points and then 5 points. And I think last week, even Cousins went in towards the end of that game. So I would not be able to trust that offense again, especially going up against a tougher um, defense with the Washington, especially Quinn as the head coach. He's a defensive head coach, so yeah, definitely would start
All right.
the
Now here,
Commanders this week. What about you?
I'm gonna start your favorite
here,
team, which you root for on a weekly
I'm gonna start
basis.
your favorite
The
team,
Houston
which you root
Texans.
for on a
They're
weekly
gonna be
basis.
facing the Tennessee
The
Titans.
Houston Texans.
Who are
They're
allowing
gonna
the
be facing
the Tennessee
second
Titans.
most fantasy points
Who are allowing the
the
team
second most
defenses so
fantasy
far
points
this year.
to
They've with
Cam Ward.
team defenses so far this year.
Had
They've
a couple of mishaps here and there.
Cam
And
Ward overall they've turned the ball over a little bit
here and there.
and
And
overall they've turned the ball over a little bit.
give the
And,
Texans a chance.
if you're looking for someone to
I
stream,
would give the Texans a chance.
Texans have been average.
If you're looking for
They've
someone to
scored
stream.
5, 6, 7 points.
Texans have been average. They've scored
averaging about 6
5,
fantasy
6,
points
7
a
points.
week. But
I think today,
averaging about 6
fantasy points,
get
close to 10 points.
I think today,
this week, they might
get
close to 10 points, fantasy points this week for you. Oh no, man. Last week I think that they would pull out the win in Jacksonville, but they just allowed that team to stay in the game because their offense couldn't do anything, and I just think until they solve those problems, too much pressure on the defense. I know they're facing a rookie QB in Ward, but who knows? I don't even know if Stingley's going to play either. So, and they lost or they let go of Johnson. So,
Yeah.
going to be interesting to see what that secondary looks like.
Yeah.
And then the defense that I would start, people are kind of like you said, when they look at you cross-eyed with Andrews, they're probably going to look at me cross-eyed with sitting the Vikings. And the only reason I am saying this, they are traveling across the pond. It's going to be an early game, Sunday, traveling overseas. Kind of how I said it in one of the other episodes, I don't think lightning strikes twice. So if I had the Vikings, I would
the
sit
defense
them
I'm going to
this
sit
week.
this
What
week
about you?
is actually the Baltimore Ravens.
I'm going to sit this
They've
week
only had
is
one
actually
good game
the
this year.
Baltimore
That
Ravens.
it was against Cleveland.
They've only had one good,
but the other
good game
two they've
this year
actually
that
scored negative
was
fantasy
against Cleveland.
But
They're going to be facing
they've actually scored
Chiefs.
negative fantasy points.
Even though they
they're
haven't
going to be
been
facing the Chiefs,
overpowering people,
even though they
they're still
haven't
a decent
been
offense.
overpowering
people, Pat
they're still
Mahomes
a
is always
decent
going to play up
offense.
to,
And
when
Pat
Mahomes
Mahomes
is always
when
going
he
to play up
faces
to when
Josh
when
Allen
when
or
he faces Lamar Jackson, he always raises his game.
Josh Allen or he faces
And
Lamar
the
Jackson,
offense
he always
should
raises his game.
probably be a little better.
And the
Xavier
offense
Worthy
should,
might
probably
play
be
this
a little
week,
better, which will help.
and
Xavier
Worthy
Worthy
might
yes,
play
and,
this week.
the
Which
Chiefs
will
are
help.
allowing
And
yes, and
the fifth
Chiefs
fewest
are
fantasy
allowing
points to defenses. So
the fifth fewest fantasy
the
points.
Baltimore Ravens are still 81%
so
owned, which I understand. But
the Baltimore Ravens
are still 81%
they
owned, which
when
I
they play
understand.
a decent offense,
Yeah,
they don't seem to do well. So
when they play
I would
decent
sit
offense, they don't seem to do well. So I would sit them this week. All right. So that concludes our start/sits for week 4. Hopefully everyone's not doing too bad in their leagues. Please give us a like, share, give us a follow. We're on all major platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. If you have any questions, you can reach me on X. That would be at Archreaper, ARCHREAPR. Leo, where can they reach you? Thanks, everyone.